Look, my designation is Instructor, Vex Korean Crucible Training Facility, designation, Kappa 7. In 18 cycles, I've certified 63 recruits. 784 failed. 14 died before extraction could reach them. I signed every report without hesitation. That's the job. Selection demands casualties. This report concerns recruit CT 9947, Cade Merrick human, who completed the trial while consuming native toxins rated lethal to 11 of 12 Galactic Council species. What follows violated every assumption I held about biological limits, every doctrine I taught, every certainty I carried. I still see him, crouched in the dust, chewing that root while his oxygen saturation dropped to 14%, smiling. That's when I knew. Either our understanding of survival was fundamentally wrong, or humanity was something we'd catastrophically underestimated. The transport broke through the cloud layer at 0600 station time. I watched from the observation tower 400 meters above the landing field. The main display showed 15 life signs, 15 recruits, 12 species, all of them selected for resilience, at least according to their files. The planet didn't look hostile from orbit. That was the point. Muted browns and grays, slow cloud formations, large stretches of stable land, no violent storms, no burning surfaces, nothing that screamed Deathworld at first glance. That's what made it perfect. Surface conditions are within projected parameters. My assistant Greer didn't look up from his console. Temperature 47 Celsius in the landing zone. Atmospheric toxins stable. Gravity 1.2 standard. I gave a slight movement of acknowledgement. Standard parameters. Survivable for adapted species. Lethal for the unprepared. Begin intake sequence. The transport settled onto the pad with a heavy thud. Through the viewport, I could see heat distortion already rising from the dark soil. Scattered rock formations. Low twisted vegetation that looked half dead. The kind of environment that appeared manageable until you tried to live in it. Inside the transport, the recruits sat in enforced silence. I pulled up the roster on my secondary screen. Centauri Warrior, Kalith Engineer, Vraxian Scout, 3 Theran Pack Hunters, a Silthan Navigator, others, different builds, different biologies, all supposedly resilient, and 1 human. I isolated his file. Cade Merrick, male, age 29 standard, origin Cascade Range, North America Sector Earth, occupation wilderness medical responder, no military background, no combat training, no augmentation. I'd flagged his application twice, rejected it twice, overruled by personnel allocation. They needed diversity metrics. They got a liability. His bio readouts showed normal parameters for his species. Heart rate 62 beats per minute. Respiration 14 breaths per minute. Blood oxygen 98%. Temperature 37 Celsius. Unremarkable. Greer leaned closer to his screen. The human. You think he'll make it past day 1? I didn't answer immediately. I watched the camera feed as the rear hatch began to open. Heat rolled in, visible, heavy, the kind that settled into lungs and stayed there. No, I said quietly. Humans don't adapt fast enough. The recruits moved, some quickly bursting out to claim space and assert dominance. The Centauri designation, Zira Talvin, was first out scanning the terrain with predatory focus. The Kalith Nix hesitated at the threshold, tentacles curling anxiously. The human was last. He paused at the hatch opening, just stood there. I zoomed the camera feed, studying his face. No fear, no aggression, just observation. His eyes tracked across the landscape, left to right, systematic. Then he inhaled, deeply, testing the air before committing to it. Interesting, Greer muttered. The human stepped out. His movements were economical, not rushed, not hesitant, deliberate. He walked 10 paces from the transport, stopped and tilted his head slightly. Listening, reading the environment. Disembark complete, Greer reported. All recruits mobile, beginning environmental exposure protocol. I watched the biometric feeds, heart rate spiking across the board, and his body's registered the heat, the gravity, the atmospheric composition. The Silthan's breathing accelerated to 32 breaths per minute. One of the Therans showed early signs of heat stress. The human's heart rate increased by 6 beats. His breathing slowed. Slowed. Check sensor calibration on CT 9947, I said. Greer ran the diagnostic. Sensors functioning normally. He's compensating. Intentional breath control. I leaned closer to the screen. The human stood still, hands loose at his sides, taking slow measured breaths through his nose. Every few seconds he'd exhale fully, then inhale again. Slower each time. Where did he learn that Greer pulled up the file addendum? Wilderness medical responder, specialized in high-altitude rescue, extreme weather extraction. Cascade range incidents include I cut him off. How extreme, Greer scrolled. Mountain avalanche, 9 survivors, 11 days solo, survival temperature variance, -30 to +15 Celsius. Successful extraction of all personnel, despite enough. I watched the human adjust his stance, shifting his weight distribution as he acclimated to the increased gravity. Adaptation time 40 seconds. Impossible without prior conditioning or prior experience. The briefing was standard. No extended instruction, no reassurance, just the essentials. Survive. My voice carried across the landing field through external speakers. 3 cycles. Resources are not provided. Extraction will occur for those who complete the trial. I paused. Let the silence build. For those who do not, extraction is unnecessary. The recruits understood. Some shifted nervously, others set their expressions determined. The Zentari Zara rolled her shoulders and cracked her neck. Confident, aggressive. The human just nodded once, like I'd confirmed something he already knew. The recruits dispersed. No direction, no guidance, just open terrain and 3 cycles to prove they deserved to survive. Most ran, seeking distance, claiming territory, establishing dominance through movement. The human walked, not fast, not slow, just steady. His eyes swept the ground as he moved. I tracked him on the overhead display. He wasn't running from the environment. He was reading it. Soil composition, I noted aloud. He's studying surface texture. Greer pulled up the geological overlay. That area has minimal moisture retention, low nutrient density. Why would he? The human stopped, crouched, pressed his hand into the soil. Then he stood and changed direction. 30 degrees east. Greer and I exchanged a glance. He's navigating by terrain analysis, Greer said slowly. Without instruments, I said nothing, just watched. The heat built as the first cycle progressed. The sun climbed through thin cloud cover, pushing surface temperature to 53 Celsius. Sweat formed quickly on exposed skin. Evaporation was inefficient in the thick air. I watched 6 recruits struggle. 2 collapsed from heat exhaustion within the first 3 hours. Extraction teams moved in. Silent, efficient. The bodies were removed. The human adjusted his pace, not faster, more controlled. He'd stripped off his outer layer, wrapping it around his head and neck. Makeshift sun protection. His movement became more efficient. Shorter steps, less energy expenditure. Energy matters, I said quietly. He understands that. Water matters more. Greer replied, highlighting several biofeeds showing dangerous dehydration levels. I switched to the human's camera feed, his perspective. He was scanning the terrain ahead, looking for something specific. Not water sources, not shelter, something else. He found it near a shallow depression in the ground. The soil there was darker, slightly damp. I zoomed the overhead view. No visible water source. He crouched, pressed his hand deep into the soil, held it there for 10 seconds. Then he started digging. What is he doing? Greer leaned forward. The human dug carefully, not frantically, methodically, creating a small pit about 30 centimeters deep. Moisture began to collect at the bottom. Not much, barely visible. He removed a strip of fabric from his sleeve, pressed it into the damp soil, waited. Then he squeezed it over his mouth. Dark liquid dripped onto his tongue. He swallowed. My screen flashed red. Contamination alert. Greer's voice was sharp. Contaminant level 340 parts per million. Fatal for Calith at 200. Dangerous for most species at 150. The human squeezed the fabric again, drank, paused, and assessed his body's reaction. Then he did it again. He's metabolizing it, I said. Impossible. Greer pulled up comparative biology data. Human liver enzyme variation. Earth classification shows high natural toxin exposure. Environmental adaptation 2. I cut him off again. Show me Earth's data. Full spectrum. The display shifted. Earth's environmental profile loaded. I read in silence. Temperature variance -40 to +50 Celsius across inhabited zones. Atmospheric toxin exposure, volcanic emissions, industrial pollutants, biological pathogens. Predator density high across all ecosystems. Disease vectors extensive. Natural disasters frequent and severe. Deathworld classification. Class 12. I stared at the screen. Our facility was Class 9. We've been testing apex predators on a training ground softer than their homeworld. Greer looked at me. What do we do? I watched the human stand. He'd collected enough moisture to stabilize. Not thrive, just stabilize. enough to stay ahead of dehydration. We continue observation, I said. The first night began before I expected it. The planet's rotation was faster than standard. Darkness fell quickly. Temperature dropped 30 degrees in 2 hours. I watched the thermal imaging feeds. Recruits scattered across the terrain trying to find shelter, trying to stay warm. 4 failed. Their core temperatures dropped too fast. Hypothermia set in. Extraction teams moved through the darkness collecting the bodies. 9 recruits remained. The human had found a fractured rock formation. Not a cave, not true shelter, just an overhang, a windbreak. He positioned himself against the rock face, minimizing exposure to the wind cutting across the plain. Then he did something unexpected. He started gathering material, dry vegetation, fragments of broken growth, loose debris. He arranged them carefully against the rock, creating a barrier. Not a full shelter, just enough to block the wind, to trap residual warmth. Greer monitored his temperature, 36.1 Celsius, dropping but stable. He's managing heat loss. I switched to audio. The wind howled across the plain. In the distance, something screamed. One of the native predators, probably. Hunting. Then I heard voices. The human wasn't alone. I zoomed the night vision camera. The Zentari Zera approached from the west, limping slightly. The Calith Nyx came from the north, tentacles wrapped tightly around its core. Both were showing signs of hypothermia. The human looked up as they approached, said nothing, just shifted position, made space behind his windbreak. Zera hesitated. Her pride wouldn't want to accept help, especially from a human, from someone she'd mocked hours earlier. The cold doesn't care about your pride, the human said. His voice was quiet, matter of fact. Here, share body heat. Physics, not charity. Zera stared at him, then at the growing darkness, then at the temperature reading on her wrist display. She moved behind the windbreak. Nyx followed without hesitation. The 3 of them arranged themselves efficiently, backs to the rock, bodies close. The windbreak blocked the worst of the wind. Shared warmth stabilized their core temperatures. I watched in silence. Greer finally spoke. He's teaching. Competitors become allies. Inefficient, I said automatically. Doctrine says individual resilience determines survival. But I didn't believe it anymore. Not fully. The human reached into his pack, pulled out a piece of root he'd collected earlier, broke it into 3 pieces, offered one to Zera, one to Nyx, kept the smallest for himself. Zera took it suspiciously. What is this food, the human said. Tested it earlier. Bitter, fibrous, won't kill you. You tested it. Nyx's voice carried digital modulation. On yourself. The human nodded. Small doses. Waited for reactions. No adverse effects. Edible enough. He bit into his piece. Chewed slowly. Greer pulled up the botanical analysis. That root contains alkaloids toxic to 7 species on record. Not to humans, apparently. Zera bit into hers, made a face. Disgusting. The human smiled slightly. Yeah, but calories are calories. They ate in silence. 3 beings from 3 different worlds huddled behind a crude barrier, sharing contaminated food in the darkness of a planet designed to kill them. I made a note in the observation log. Unexpected cooperation, social cohesion under stress. Human appears to be catalyst. Greer looked at me. Should we flag this? Not yet, I said. Let's see what happens next. The screaming woke them, not the wind, not the predators in the distance. Something closer. Someone failing. I checked the feeds. One of the Theran pack hunters separated from its group, caught in the open when the temperature dropped too fast. Its biology couldn't compensate. Extraction team was en route. 4 minutes out. The Theran wouldn't last 4 minutes. I expected the 3 behind the windbreak to stay put, to conserve their own warmth, their own chances. The human stood. Where are you going? Zera grabbed his arm. The human pulled free, gently. Someone's dying. Not our problem. The human looked at her, just looked. His expression was calm, not judgmental, just different, operating from a completely different set of assumptions. It is to me, he said. Then he stepped out into the darkness. I switched cameras tracking him. He moved toward the Theran's last known position. Not running, controlled movement to preserve energy, but fast enough to matter. Greer's voice was tense, core temperature dropping. Negative consequences in 90 seconds, I know. The human found the Theran collapsed against a rock, shivering violently, the final stage before shutdown. Hey, the human said, his voice was steady, calm. Can you hear me? The Theran's eyes focused slowly, weak, cold. I'm going to move you. It's going to hurt. But you'll live. The human didn't wait for permission. He grabbed the Theron under its shoulders, bracing against the weight. 1.2 gravity made everything heavier. The Theron massed at least 90 kilograms. The human dragged it toward his windbreak. 15 meters. 20. His own core temperature dropping with every second of exposure. 40 meters from shelter, his legs buckled. He caught himself, adjusted his grip, kept moving. Zira appeared from the darkness, grabbed the Theron's other side. Together they hauled it back. Nyx had expanded the windbreak, made space for 4. They arranged the Theron in the center. Warmest position. Shared heat from all sides. The human was shaking now, his own temperature down to 35.3. Dangerous, stupid Zira said. You almost died. The human pulled his jacket tighter. Didn't though. Why? Nyx's voice was genuinely confused. Why risk yourself? The human was quiet for a moment. Then, because I could. Not an answer, Zira said. The human looked at her. It's the only answer I have. I sat in the observation tower, watching 4 beings from 4 worlds huddle together for survival, sharing warmth, sharing resources, sharing risk. Everything I'd taught said this was wrong, inefficient, weakness pooling together. But their survival rates were higher than the individualists. Greer broke the silence. Instructor, the human's file. I found something. Show me. A new document loaded. Addendum to Cade Merrick's application. Red flagged. Restricted access. I read it twice. Cascade Range avalanche. 14 hikers trapped. 5 died in initial impact. 9 survivors. Cade Merrick lead responder on scene. Conditions negative, 30 Celsius active snowfall, 60-kilometer winds. Helicopter extraction impossible. Ground rescue 12 hours minimum. Merrick remained with survivors. 11 days. Shared food, rationed water. Kept them alive through temperature cycling, altitude sickness, and resource depletion. All 9 extracted alive. Merrick hospitalized for 3 weeks. Frostbite, malnutrition, hypothermia damage. Returned to active duty 6 months later. Greer's voice was quiet. This isn't training for him. No, I said, it's repetition. The first cycle wasn't over yet, but I already knew. The human wasn't learning to survive hostile environments. He already knew how. The ground moved just before dawn. Subtle tremors at first, then more pronounced. Rock formations cracked. Sections of earth collapsed inward, revealing deeper layers. And things that had been beneath. I saw them on thermal imaging before visual. Heat signatures rising from the fractured ground. Small, fast, moving in coordinated bursts. Native predators, Greer said. Life cycle triggers during ground shifts. Emergence phase. How many sensors are reading? Hundreds, maybe thousands. I watched the heat signatures spread across the terrain. The recruits scattered in the darkness wouldn't see them coming. Wouldn't understand their behavior. Some wouldn't survive. Issue alert, I said. Greer hesitated. Protocol says no warnings during trials. Issue it anyway. The alert went out. Standard emergency broadcast, immediate danger, seek elevated position. 2 recruits responded too late. I watched their life signs spike, then flatline. Extraction teams couldn't reach them in time. 8 recruits remained. The human's group was already moving, not panicking, not running blind. The human had heard the ground shift, understood what it meant. Elevated position, he said quietly. Away from the cracks, move. They moved as a unit. Zira in front, her combat instincts guiding point position. Nyx in the center, tentacles mapping the terrain. The Theron still weak but mobile, staying close. The human at the rear watching their backs. They reached a rocky outcrop 20 meters up. Defensible, stable. That's when the first creatures reached them. I zoomed the camera, got a clear view. They were insectoid, 6 legs, mandibles, chitinous armor, about half a meter long. Not individually dangerous to a prepared warrior, but there were 30 of them, and they moved like water. Zira drew her blade. Combat stance. Wait, the human said. Zira looked back. What watched them first? The human crouched, studying the creature's movement. They scattered across the rocks below, searching, hunting. Their movement patterns weren't random. They responded to vibration, to motion. He picked up a small stone, tossed it, not at the creatures, past them. 10 meters to the left. Every creature turned instantly, rushed toward the impact point. Aggressive, focused. The human tossed another stone. Right side this time. Same response. Instantaneous redirection. Movement triggers, he said quietly. Aggression toward disturbance. Use it. Zero understood immediately. We become the distraction, or we avoid becoming one. The human stood slowly, controlled, minimal motion. The creatures below shifted sensors sweeping, but without sharp movement, without vibration, they didn't lock on. We move carefully, he said, no running, no sudden motion. Understand? They understood. The group descended the far side of the outcrop, slow, controlled, every step placed deliberately. The creatures ignored them. I watched in silence as they cleared the danger zone, made it to stable ground beyond the emergence site. Greer's voice was almost reverent. He tested behavioral parameters under active threat, developed a strategy, taught it, executed it, all in under 3 minutes. I saved the footage, flagged it for review. The human wasn't just surviving, he was solving. The first cycle ended with 8 recruits still standing, down from 15, standard attrition according to doctrine. But the standard didn't account for the humans group. All 4 had survived. Not just survived, thrived. Their biometrics were stable. Their cohesion was increasing. The others had survived through individual strength, through avoiding threats, through luck. The humans group had survived through understanding. I pulled up the comparison charts, showed them to Greer. Look at this, I said. Heart rate variability, stress markers, resource consumption. The humans group showed lower stress despite higher exposure to threats. They'd encountered more predators, more environmental hazards. But their physiological responses were controlled because they understood the patterns. Greer highlighted the human's specific data. His consumption rate is minimal. He's found reliable food and water sources, tested them systematically, created a sustainable resource chain, and taught it to others. Yes, I sat back, watched the sun rise over the training ground, watched the humans group settle in for rest. They'd positioned themselves well. Shelter from the coming heat, access to the moisture depression, elevated enough to spot threats. 1 cycle down, 2 to go. The human was eating something, a piece of root, different from last night's, thicker. He'd broken it open against a rock, revealing a softer core inside. He ate slowly, testing, always testing. Greer spoke quietly. Instructor, what if he completes all 3 cycles? I didn't answer immediately. I watched the human finish his food, saw him share the rest with his group, saw them settle in, preparing for the next challenge. Then we'll have to reconsider everything we thought we knew about survival, I said. The second cycle would begin in 6 hours. Higher gravity, it'd rain, more aggressive predators. I expected casualties. I just didn't expect them to come from the humans group. But I was learning. Expectations and humanity didn't align, not even close. The second cycle began without warning. No countdown, no preparation time. Just a sudden shift in the planet's behavior that told me the designers of this place understood cruelty. I felt it before the sensors registered. A pressure change in the observation tower, like something heavy settling onto the world below. Greer's console lit up red. Gravitational anomaly, reading 1.4 standard, 20% increase from baseline. I watched the feeds, watched what happened to bodies when gravity suddenly demanded more. 3 recruits collapsed immediately, just dropped. Their skeletal structures couldn't compensate fast enough. Extraction teams launched before I gave the order. They knew. Everyone knew. 5 recruits remained. Zero's leg wound from the creature attack had scabbed over. Centauri healing was efficient. She could move, though not at full capacity. I found the human's camera feed, expected to see him struggling, fighting against the increased weight, every action costing more than it had before. He was adjusting his stride. 8 seconds. That's how long it took him to analyze the new gravitational pull, recalculate his center of mass, and modify his movement pattern. 8 seconds. Greer pulled up comparative data. Average adaptation time for trained soldiers 4 to 6 minutes. For civilians, 12 to 18 minutes. The human moved like he'd done this before. His gait changed. Shorter steps, lower posture, weight distributed differently. Every movement became more economical, more precise. I zoomed in on his face. No panic, no strain beyond what the physics demanded. Just acceptance. Like gravity was a problem with a solution, and he'd already found it. Feels like hiking with full gear, he said to his group. His voice was steady. Breathe deep, lower your center. Move with it, not against it. Zyra tried to maintain her aggressive stance. Failed. The weight pulled her down. She snarled in frustration. The human touched her shoulder. Not sympathy, instruction. You're fighting it. Stop. Let it be heavy. Adjust. She looked at him. This human who weighed maybe 70 kilograms in standard gravity, now effectively 84. Giving advice to a Zentari warrior built for combat. She lowered her stance. It helped. Greer's voice was quiet. Where did he learn that I pulled up the Earth's data again? Gravity variance across terrain. High-altitude environments. Low-altitude swamps. Humans evolved moving through different gravitational stresses just by changing elevation. He didn't learn it, I said. He lived it. The heat returned worse than before. 58 Celsius on the surface. The increased gravity made every movement drain more energy. More energy meant more heat generation. More heat meant faster dehydration. The cycle was vicious. I watched 2 more recruits fail, one from heat exhaustion, one from cardiac stress under the gravitational load. 3 recruits remained, the humans group. They moved toward higher ground, not quickly. That was impossible now, but steadily. The human led them to an elevated position where wind could reach them. Where air moved, it helped. Marginally. Cade Nix's voice carried digital strain. Water reserves depleted. Require resupply within 6 hours. The human scanned the terrain below. I followed his gaze on the overhead display, looking for the moisture depressions he'd found in Cycle 1. But the landscape had changed. The ground shifts, the emergence events, the predator activity, everything had churned the surface. Old landmarks were gone. He needed a new strategy. I watched him think, watched his eyes track across the broken ground, following some logic I couldn't see yet. Then he smiled, just slightly. We're not looking for water, he said. We're looking for what finds water. Zira didn't understand. What? The human pointed. Downslope, where the ground had collapsed, where the creatures had emerged hours ago. They dig, he said. Deep. They need moisture too. We let them do the work. Greer leaned forward. He's using the native fauna as resource indicators. Smart, I admitted. If the ecology requires water, the ecology knows where it is. The human led his group down. Careful, controlled, every step calculated under the increased gravity. They found the first collapsed burrow within 20 minutes. The earth around it was disturbed, freshly dug. Something large had been excavating. The human knelt, dug where the creature had dug. 30 centimeters down, his fingers found something. Thick fibers. Underground growth. Root structures that went deep. He pulled one free, as thick as his forearm. He broke it open against a rock. Moisture in notes. Clear. Almost clean. He smelled it. Tasted a drop. Waited 30 seconds. Watching his body's reaction. Then he drank. Handed pieces to the others. They drank. Greer ran contamination analysis. Toxin levels acceptable for most species. How did he know? Because the creatures were healthy, I said. If the water source was poisonous, they'd show it. The human wasn't just surviving the environment. He was reading it, understanding its logic, using its own systems against it. Or with it, I was no longer sure which. The clouds gathered faster than predicted. Not standard weather patterns. Something else. Greer's sensors showed atmospheric changes. Chemical composition shifting. Increased acidity and precipitation formation. I'd seen this before. Cycle 7 lost 4 recruits to acid rain. They didn't understand what was happening until their skin started burning. Issue weather alert, I said. Greer transmitted. The humans group was already moving. They'd seen the clouds, understood what they meant. Shelter, the human said. Overhangs, angles matter. They climbed, fighting gravity and time. The first drops fell before they reached cover. I watched the liquid hit rock, heard the faint hiss through audio pickups, saw the slight discoloration where it landed. Not water, he said. pH 3.2. The human found an overhang, not deep, not perfect, but angled. The rock face above would deflect most of the falling drops. Basic geometry turned into survival. They pressed close to the inner edge, minimizing exposure. Some drops still reached them. I saw them flinch. Small burns on exposed skin. Not lethal, not yet. The human adjusted positions, calculated angles, shifted everyone by centimeters until the exposure was minimal. The rain increased, became a downpour. The ground below started reacting. Hissing, smoking slightly where the acid concentrated. It lasted 40 minutes. When it stopped, the landscape was different again. Sharper, less stable. Old paths had dissolved. New cracks had formed. The human stepped out carefully, testing each foothold before committing weight. Greer pulled up geological analysis. Surface integrity compromised in multiple sectors. New instabilities forming. I watched the human navigate the changed terrain. He didn't hesitate, didn't second guess, just moved with careful certainty, like he'd done this before too. How many disasters has Earth thrown at this man, Greer asked. I pulled up the file again, scanned deeper. Found incident reports. Avalanche, forest fire, flash flood, earthquake response, heat wave extraction. All of them, I said quietly. Earth has thrown all of them. They found the markings 2 hours after the rain stopped. The acid had exposed deeper rock layers, revealed something underneath. The human saw it first, stopped, stared. Nix, he called. Come look at this. The Calith engineer moved forward, extended sensors, analyzed the exposed surface, then went very still. I zoomed the camera, saw what they were seeing, lines, precise, geometric, cut into the rock at depths that couldn't be natural erosion, patterns that repeated, intentional, designed. This is manufactured, Nick said. The modulation in its voice carried something I'd never heard before. Fear. The entire planet. This is engineered. Greer turned to me. Instructor, I know, you knew I pulled up the classified files. The ones I wasn't supposed to access. The ones that explained what this place really was. The Crucible Protocol, established approximately 4.3 million years ago by an unknown precursor species. Purpose to test adaptive intelligence across biological variables. Not strength, not speed, not power. Adaptability. Every environmental challenge here was designed. Heat cycles, gravity shifts, acid rain, predator emergence patterns. All of it controlled. All of it testing specific parameters. We'd been using it for 18 cycles without understanding what it was built for. Greer's voice was hollow. We've been selecting for the wrong traits. Yes, the human was still examining the markings. His fingers traced the patterns, reading them somehow. It makes sense, he said quietly. Test what you can control. If you want to know what survives, you need consistent variables. Zira looked at him. You're not surprised, the human shrugged. Earth does the same thing, different mechanism, same result. If you can't adapt, you die. He stood, looked around at the transformed landscape, the acid-scarred rocks, the collapsed ground, the alien geometry exposed beneath. This place isn't trying to kill us, he said. It's trying to teach us. What's the lesson, Nix asked. The human smiled. That there's always a pattern. You just have to survive long enough to see it. That's when Zira made her mistake. We'd been monitoring for 3 hours, watching them navigate the post-rain terrain. Their cohesion was strong, their adaptation rate was remarkable. I was beginning to believe all three might complete the trial. Then Zira's pride returned. She'd been wounded in Cycle 1, both the creature slash and the cold. Saved by the human twice. She owed him. That debt sat poorly with his Zentari warrior. They don't accept help easily, don't show weakness. She needed to prove herself. I've scouted ahead, she announced. Better shelter 2 kilometers north. Higher ground. Defensible position. The human looked up. 2 kilometers in this gravity. That's a lot of energy. I can handle it. Zira, the human's voice was careful. That's not the question, she bristled. Then what is... Can we handle it if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong, she left before he could argue further, moving fast, pushing through the increased gravity with warrior determination. The human watched her go, didn't follow. Nix shifted anxiously. Should we? He'll give her space, I said aloud, though they couldn't hear me. He understands what she's doing. Greer frowned. What is she doing? Proving she doesn't need him. Even if it kills her. It almost did. 15 minutes later, Zira's biometrics spiked. Heart rate 190. Core temperature 39.4 Celsius. Oxygen saturation dropping. She'd pushed too hard, burned too much energy. The gravity, the heat, the pride, all of it culminating in metabolic crisis. I watched her collapse in a heat distortion zone, the area where rising thermals created shimmer, where temperatures spiked 15 degrees above ambient. She went down hard. The human was moving before her vitals flatlined. Not running. That was impossible in 1.4 gravity. But fast, economical, every movement purposeful. Nix followed. The Thuron stayed with supplies. Cade Nix's voice was strained. That's a heat zone, lethal exposure time 4 minutes maximum. I know. Your oxygen reserves, I know. He kept moving. I pulled up his biometrics. Heart rate elevated but controlled. Breathing measured. Oxygen saturation 96%. Good, for now. Greer's hands hovered over the extraction controls. Instructor, if he goes into that zone, I know what happens. We have to extract them. Not yet, sir. I said not yet. I had to see, had to know. How far would he go? What would he sacrifice? The human reached the edge of the heat zone. The air shimmered, distorted, like reality itself was bending. He didn't hesitate, just stepped through. His oxygen saturation dropped immediately. 94%, 91. He found zero, unconscious, overheated, dying, grabbed her under the shoulders, started dragging. The gravity made her mass crushing. Over 100 kilograms in 1.4 standard, like hauling a boulder uphill. His oxygen hit 88%, hypoxia threshold approaching. Nix appeared at the zone edge, grabbed Zero's other side. Together they pulled, 84%. The human's legs buckled. He caught himself, adjusted grip, kept moving. Greer's voice was desperate. Extraction team inbound. 30 seconds. The human had 20 before his oxygen levels became critical. 80%, 76. His vision would be tunneling now. Coordination failing. Every step an act of will against biology shutting down. He didn't stop. 15 meters from safety. 10, 70%, 68. They cleared the heat zone. The human collapsed, released Zero, rolled onto his back, gasping. 64%. The extraction team arrived. Medical scanners activated. Emergency oxygen deployed. The human waved them off. His voice was barely audible. Her first. Check her first. They worked on Zero, stabilized her temperature, restored her hydration. She'd survive. The human's oxygen climbed slowly. 70%, 76, 82. He sat up, still breathing hard, looked at Zero's unconscious form. Stupid, he muttered. Both of us. Stupid. But he was smiling, just slightly. Greer turned to me. Oxygen saturation reached 14%. Brain damage threshold. He was seconds from permanent neural degradation. I know. Why didn't you extract them? Because I needed to see if he'd stop. If survival instinct would override his whatever drives him. And I watched the human stand slowly, check on Zero, nod to the medics, then walk back to where the Theron waited with supplies. Like nothing had happened. He won't stop, I said quietly. That's what drives him. He just won't stop. Greer was silent for a long moment. Then instructor. What are humans? I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because I was starting to understand that the question itself was wrong. Humans weren't a what. They were a how. How to survive when survival should be impossible. How to continue when continuation defies logic. How to sacrifice everything for someone who might not even deserve it. And how to do it all while smiling through oxygen deprivation. The second cycle wasn't over, but I already knew how it would end, the same way the first cycle had ended, the same way the third cycle would end, with the human still standing, still teaching, still refusing to accept that some things couldn't be survived. Because on Earth, apparently everything could be survived. You just had to be stubborn enough to prove it. The third cycle began with everything at once. No gradual escalation, no mercy, just simultaneous activation of every environmental threat the planet could generate. Heat spiked to 62 Celsius. Gravity fluctuated between 1.2 and 1.6 standard, changing every 20 minutes. The ground trembled with constant microquakes. And the creatures were everywhere. I counted thermal signatures, stopped at 300. Greer's voice was tight. This is termination protocol. They can't survive this. 3 recruits remained. The humans group. I pulled up their biometrics. Heart rates elevated but steady, oxygen levels stable, core temperatures rising but manageable. They were tired, injured, running on minimal reserves, but they were still thinking. The humans stood on elevated ground scanning the chaos below. Creatures moving in coordinated patterns, heat zones shifting, acid clouds forming on the horizon. He looked at his team. Zyra still weak from heat exhaustion. Nick's tentacles trembling with fatigue. The Theron exhausted but determined, barely functional but still thinking. Then he looked at the landscape. Really looked. And I saw it happen. Saw the moment he stopped seeing threats and started seeing systems. Nix, he said quietly. The ground tremors. Pattern, the Calith extended sensors. Analyze seismic data. Cyclic. Every 18 minutes. Amplitude increasing in western sector. The human nodded. Creatures responding to vibrations, Zero said. Like before, but more aggressive. Heat zones shifting with air pressure following the gravity fluctuations. The human was silent for 30 seconds, thinking, connecting patterns I couldn't see. Then, we're not fighting this, we're conducting it. Greer looked at me. What does that mean? I shook my head. Watch. The first wave of creatures came from the north. 30 of them. Moving fast, mandibles clicking, coordinated like a military unit. Zira drew her blade, ready stance despite her exhaustion. The human touched her shoulder. Not yet. He picked up a rock, large, heavy, threw it with everything he had, not at the creatures, 40 meters east, into a heat zone. The rock hit, created vibration. The superheated air made the sound carry differently, distorted it. Every creature turned, rushed toward the heat zone, entered it. The heat disoriented them, broke their coordination. The wave scattered. Now the human said, while they're confused, move. They moved south, controlled, quiet, leaving the creatures to fight the heat instead of them. Greer's voice carried something like awe. He weaponized the environment against itself. No, I said. He partnered with it. The difference was everything. The second wave came 20 minutes later. Larger, smarter. They'd adapted to the heat zone trick. 50 creatures, approaching from multiple directions. No single distraction would work. The human looked at the seismic sensors Nix had mapped, looked at the gravity fluctuation schedule, looked at his team. When's the next tremor, he asked. Nix checked. 4 minutes, major amplitude. Western sector will be unstable. And gravity shift. 2 minutes, increasing to 1.6. The human smiled, exhausted, almost delirious, but smiling. Then we use both. He positioned the team on a ridge overlooking unstable ground. When the gravity increased, everyone felt it. The crushing weight, the difficulty breathing. The creatures felt it too. Slowed, struggled. The human waited, counting seconds in his head. Then the tremor hit. The western sector collapsed. A massive section of ground just dropped, created a chasm, 30 meters wide. The creatures already struggling with increased gravity couldn't adapt fast enough. Half of them fell. The ones that didn't scattered in confusion. The humans group moved during the chaos, relocated to more defensible ground, put the chasm between them and the threat. Greer pulled up the probability matrix, the chances of those two events aligning perfectly. He didn't wait for them to align, I said. He knew the schedule, created the circumstances, made it happen. That's not survival, that's mastery. No, I said quietly, that's adaptation. There's a difference. The third wave was different. One creature, but massive, easily 3 meters long, armored, ancient, the kind of predator that had survived every iteration of this planet's evolutionary cycles. It emerged from a deep fissure, moved with terrible purpose, hunting. It had learned to ignore distractions, ignore the heat zones, ignore the tremors. It wanted them. Zira stepped forward, her blade ready. I'll hold it off, you run. The human didn't move, running in 1.6 gravity while exhausted. We'd last 50 meters, then we fight. The human looked at the creature, studying it, watching how it moved, where it put weight, how it navigated terrain. No, he said, we don't. What? The creature was closing. 30 meters, 20. The human picked up a rock, threw it, not at the creature, behind it, where unstable ground met a heat zone near a documented tremor point. The creature ignored it, kept coming. 15 meters, 10. Trust me, the human said. The tremor hit early, unpredicted, random. The ground beneath the creature collapsed. It fell, didn't die, just fell into a lower section, trapped temporarily. Move, the human said. Now they moved. The creature roared behind them, angry, but blocked by terrain it couldn't navigate quickly. Greer turned to me. He didn't know that tremor was coming. No, but he positioned them where it wouldn't matter if it did. Yes, that's not luck. No, I agreed, that's something else entirely. But the planet wasn't finished. The final challenge came without warning, a coordinated assault from multiple creature groups, simultaneous environmental hazards, everything designed to overwhelm any defense. The humans group was pinned, elevated position, good visibility, but surrounded. This is it, Zira said. Last stand. The human shook his head. No. Last lesson. He looked at Nix, the engineer. You've been mapping this place for 3 cycles. Where does everything converge? Nix processed. Extended sensors? There, Western Valley. All drainage, all seismic activity, all heat circulation, everything flows through that point. The human turned to Zira. And you've been studying their attack patterns. How do they respond to concentrated threats? Swarm behavior, Zira said. They converge on the largest threat signature. The human looked at the Theron. On, you haven't said much, but you're a pack hunter. What do packs do when outnumbered? The Theron's voice was rough. We make the enemy think they're outnumbered instead. The human nodded. Then that's what we do. He outlined the plan. Simple, insane, brilliant. They would create a cascade, use the environment itself as a weapon, draw every creature to the convergence point, then trigger everything at once. Greer pulled up the simulation. The success probability is, don't tell me, I said, I don't want to know. They executed it in phases. Phase 1, Nix rigged a resonance device from salvaged equipment, created vibrations that mimicked distress calls. Every creature species responded to it differently, but all responded. The device was planted at the convergence point. Phase 2, Zira created heat signatures using reflective surfaces and concentrated sunlight, made the convergence point look like a massive heat bloom. Every creature associated heat with prey or threat. Phase 3, the Theron distributed scent markers, blood, pheromones, biological triggers. Phase 4, the human calculated the timing, when gravity would shift, when tremors would hit, when acid rain would fall. He synchronized everything, then they activated it. I watched from the observation tower as hundreds of creatures converged on the western valley, drawn by sound, heat, scent, swarming together in confused aggression. The humans group was already gone, relocated to high ground, watching. Now the human whispered. The gravity shifted. 1.6. The creatures struggled with the weight. The tremor hit. Major, the valley floor collapsed. Creatures fell, scrambled, panicked. The acid rain started, concentrated, deliberate. The clouds had been seeded hours ago by natural evaporation from heat zones. The valley became chaos. The creatures fought each other, fought the environment, forgot entirely about the humans group. When it was over, the threat was neutralized. Not destroyed, just dispersed, confused, no longer coordinated. Greer stared at the screens. He conducted an entire ecosystem like an orchestra. No, I said softly. He understood the music that was already playing. He just directed it. The extraction signal activated at dawn. 3 cycles complete. 3 recruits surviving. The humans group made their way to the landing zone. Slow, exhausted, injured, but alive. I descended from the observation tower. Against protocol, against doctrine, I needed to see them face to face. The shuttle was already there. Waiting, medical teams ready. The human helped Zira walk. She was limping. Pride wounded more than body. Nick supported the Theron. Everyone supporting everyone. They saw me standing at the landing pad, stopped. I looked at the human, at Cade Merrick. This recruit who had violated every expectation, shattered every assumption. You completed the trial, I said. He nodded, just barely. You violated protocols, helped competitors, created alliances. He met my eyes. I helped people. Different thing. I studied him, tried to understand what I was seeing. His file showed wilderness medic, rescue responder, no military training, no combat background. Just someone who'd learned to survive Earth. Where did you learn to do this, I asked. The adaptation, the pattern recognition, the environmental integration. The human was quiet for a moment, then Cascade Range. Avalanche, 14 hikers trapped. 5 died immediately, 9 left. Temperatures dropping, storm coming. No rescue possible for 11 days. He looked away, toward the horizon, towards something I couldn't see. I made decisions, he continued. Rationed wrong, sheltered wrong, lost my little sister on day 7 because I chose efficiency over compassion. She died believing I'd abandon her for the others. His voice was steady, but something in it carried weight I couldn't measure. So I learned, he said, that survival isn't about the strongest individual, it's about the strongest system. And systems require everyone. Zira put a hand on his shoulder. She would be proud. What you became. The human smiled. Tired, sad, maybe. I pulled up my data pad, called up the classification form, the one I'd filled out hundreds of times. How do I rate you, I asked. Greer was beside me. Monitoring. Extraordinary performance, he said. Top percentile. Highest survival metrics in facility history. I shook my head. No, that's not right. Greer frowned. Instructor? I looked at the human, then at Zira and Nix and the Theron. All of them changed by 3 cycles with someone who'd shown them a different way. Then I understood. I accessed the classified files. The ones about Earth, the full planetary assessment I'd been avoiding, Earth classification Deathworld Class 12, our facility Class 9. I read the environmental data. Temperature variance negative 89 to 58 Celsius, atmospheric toxins, volcanic industrial biological. Gravity variation by altitude significant, predator density extreme, natural disasters constant. Humans didn't evolve for one environment. They evolved for variability itself. I looked at the human. This performance, what you did here, is this exceptional for your species? He considered, thought about it honestly, then shook his head. No, he said, this is just what we do. Earth doesn't give you a choice. You adapt or you die. Most of us choose adapt. I entered the classification. Baseline. Greer stared at the screen. Baseline instructor. This was baseline, I repeated. This is not exceptional for his species. This is standard. I submitted the report. Watched it propagate through the system. Baseline human performance, survival probability in hostile environments, 95%. Expected adaptation time to novel threats, minutes. Cooperation index maximum. Environmental integration capability unprecedented. Recommendation. Reclassify human limitations. Previous assessments drastically underestimated species standard capabilities. The human was already heading toward the shuttle, ready to leave, ready for whatever came next. Wait, I called. He turned. Thank you, I said, for showing me that strength isn't about dominating the environment. It's about understanding it. He smiled. That's not strength. That's just survival. Real strength is teaching someone else to survive after you're gone. He gestured to Zira and Nix. They'll do fine, better than fine. They learned. Then he walked away, boarded the shuttle, disappeared into the transport. I stood on the landing pad, watching the shuttle climb through the atmosphere, carrying 3 recruits who'd survived what most couldn't. Greer appeared beside me. What do we tell the council? I thought about it. About everything I'd seen, everything I'd learned. We tell them the truth, I said. That we've been using the crucible wrong, selecting for the wrong traits, testing the wrong capabilities. And humans, I watched the shuttle become a point of light, then vanish. Humans are what the crucible was designed to find, I said. Not the strongest, not the fastest, the most adaptable. They're not anomalies. They're the baseline, the standard we should measure against. What does that mean for the rest of us? It means we have a lot to learn. The council meeting was brief, contentious, expected. I presented the data, showed the footage, explained the classification. They didn't want to believe it. Humans are a recent species, one counselor argued. Low technology, limited range. How can they be Deathworld natives, I interrupted. From a Class 12 environment. Every challenge we design here is mild compared to their homeworld. Another counselor. This is one individual. Statistical anomaly. I pulled up the broader data. Human performance across all trials, across all facilities. The pattern was consistent. Not anomaly, I said. Standard deviation is minimal. This is species normal behavior. The silence was heavy. Finally, what do you recommend? I looked at the display. At Earth spinning in the background. Blue and white and green. Beautiful. Deadly. Reevaluate everything I said. Our training protocols. Our selection criteria. Our understanding of what makes a species capable. And human specifically, I thought about the human. About Cade Merrick eating contaminated roots while teaching others to survive. Smiling through oxygen deprivation. Conducting environmental chaos like music. Recruit them, I said. Train with them. Learn from them. Because they've mastered something we're still trying to understand. How to survive anywhere. How to adapt to anything. How to turn a death world into home. The recruits who trained with Cade Zira was leading integration teams. Nix was redesigning shelter protocols. The Theron was teaching pack dynamics, all of them spreading what one human had shown them. 3 months later, I received a message. From Cade Merrick, brief, casual, like we were old friends. Instructor Corian, heard you're getting more humans through the program. Good, they'll do fine. Just remember, we're not exceptional. We're just practiced. Earth taught us. Hurricanes, earthquakes, predators, diseases. Every disaster you can imagine. We're not from a peaceful world. We're from a place that gave us no choice but to adapt. That's not a gift. That's just Tuesday. But hey, if you ever need someone to help redesign the trials, let me know. I've got some ideas. Stay safe out there, Cade. I read it twice, then filed it. Then I pulled up the Crucible parameters, started redesigning. Because he was right. We'd been testing the wrong things. Time to learn from the ones who'd already mastered the test. My name is Instructor Vex Corian. I've overseen Crucible training for 18 cycles across 47 worlds. I thought I understood survival, thought I knew what separated the capable from the casualties. Then I met Cade Merrick. He didn't conquer the Crucible. He understood it. Every challenge, heat toxins, gravity predators exists on his homeworld. Our trial wasn't exceptional to him. It was familiar. Humans don't survive because they're stronger. They don't thrive because they're smarter. They persist because they're from a place that gives them no choice. Earth doesn't raise specialists. It raises adapters, generalists, beings who can become whatever the environment demands. We call this a test. They called it practice. The galaxy has 47 member species. Each evolved for specific environments, specific niches, specific advantages. Humans evolved for variability itself, for uncertainty, for chaos. That's not a skill you can teach. That's baseline. That's what they are. And it terrifies me. Not because they're dangerous, but because they show us what we're not. What we gave up when we specialize. When we chose mastery of one environment over flexibility across all. Humans retain something we lost. The ability to make any place home, any challenge surmountable, any disaster survivable. We thought they were weak because they had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. We were wrong. Their weapon is adaptation. Their armor is persistence. Their strength is refusing to accept that anything is truly impossible. 3 cycles, 3 recruits, all survived. Not because the human was exceptional, but because exceptional for humans is just baseline. And baseline for them is something the rest of us are still trying to comprehend. They're here now, in our militaries, our rescue services, our exploration teams, teaching us, whether we ask them to or not, because that's what they do. They survive, they adapt, they teach, and they keep smiling through the oxygen deprivation. That's not madness, that's not bravery, that's just human, and the galaxy will never be the same. Final surveillance log, Crucible facility, Kappa 7, recruit CT-9947, Cade Merrick currently assigned to training cadre. Observed conducting orientation session with new human recruits, teaching environmental integration techniques, sharing contaminated rations while explaining toxin tolerance thresholds. When questioned about his methods, subject replied, "Someone taught me to survive once, now it's my turn." Classification remains baseline. Threat assessment, none. Value assessment, incalculable. End log. Far below on the training world that had tested so many a new cycle was beginning. New recruits, new species, new challenges. And one human, teaching, always teaching, still eating those roots, still smiling, still showing us what baseline really means.